Hi guys, it's Tori. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm continuing my book review of Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds by Brandon Sanderson. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit more of a deep dive into the characters of this book. One of the things that I talk about a lot in my channel is the balance in a cast of characters and how important it is to provide opposites, how to provide parallels, to provide a good mix of different distinct personalities within a cast of characters to make everything more compelling and there's more dynamics going on in the story between all the different relationships. This book did an incredible job of that. First of all, let's talk about our main man, Stephen Leeds, who is the protagonist of this book. Now, Stephen Leeds has some kind of a mental health condition that is kind of close to schizophrenia. Brandon Sanderson does a great job of leaving himself a space where he can explore without being committed to any specific disorder. Stephen is so interesting, and one of the things that I appreciated about his character the most is that he refers to himself in the book as a kind of a blank slate. Like he views all of the interesting parts of him as being contained in his aspects, not necessarily in himself. Now, I found him to be an incredibly interesting protagonist because he is so flawed and because he was able to, compartmentalize so much. It is really hard to talk about this book without getting into the mental health themes. I can do this. I can do this. He is an unreliable narrator. He has opinions about himself that are obviously flawed, but he is stuck to them, and he tells us about them on a regular basis because it is in first person, so we are actually in Stephen's head as he's going through these different cases and dealing with his aspects. I'm going to briefly touch on the three main aspects that Stephen deals with on a daily basis. They kind of represent the three main pillars of Stephen as a human being who needs stability. There's a physical protector, there's an emotional protector, and there's a mental protector, and I think that's so interesting. So we have Tobias, who is the oldest aspect that has been with Stephen the longest, and he is the kindest-hearted, wonderful character. He is very helpful. He's a trivia bank, so whenever Stephen starts getting kind of emotionally unstable, Tobias comes forward and he starts talking to Stephen about some random thing, and his calming voice helps Stephen come back to the present and helps him kind of relax and calm down and move forward. He was responsible for helping Stephen kind of stay, even keel with his emotions so he could focus on the cases that he was trying to solve. The second character that Stephen creates as a hallucination is Ivy, and Ivy represents kind of the mental stability of his system of aspects. She is a very straight-laced kind of businesswoman type. She is a psychologist, and Stephen often talks about that he doesn't need, therapy because he has a psychologist already, and I thought that was really funny. And Ivy does a really good job of checking in to see what the mental state is, and she kind of keeps harmony between everyone involved in the system. Stephen has 40 plus aspects, so she kind of makes sure that the mental balance is all kind of there and everybody's working well together, and then she offers her advice psychologically whenever Stephen is out on a case, and she reads body language and she tells him when somebody's lying, and she was also a really good balance with the other two main aspects. The third aspect that we are introduced to that's kind of the main trio is JC. Now, JC is he's a character. Let me just say that. Where Tobias and Ivy try to kind of keep an even keel on everything, JC is the chaos, and he is a physical protector, so he kind of takes care of any kind of external threats. He lets Stephen know if somebody's packing some heat, and he tells Stephen what kind of weapons they might be up against, and he looks for ways to get out of buildings, and he's an ex-military character who has an insane knowledge of different weapons and warfare and all of that, tactics and all that kind of thing, and He doesn't really have a filter, which I found really hilarious in a lot of moments, and especially because Sanderson handled that really well. You know, JC would make some kind of slightly off-color remark about somebody, and Sanderson would immediately have one of the other characters call him out on that. So I thought that was a really brilliant way to do it, because JC really doesn't have any filter, and it's funny because the other characters are constantly calling him out for that. So those three are kind of the main pillars of the system that Stephen is working with. Now again, and I know I mentioned this in the first video, but Stephen's hallucinations were all created by him to compartmentalize different parts of his knowledge base so that he can call on them whenever he needs their particular expertise to help solve a case. Okay, the last character that I want to mention briefly, there are other aspects that I could talk about on this video, and maybe at some point I will do an even deeper dive into the characters of this story. But the last character that I want to talk about is Wilson. Wilson is a real human. He is the butler. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He's the butler, he's the chauffeur that helps Stephen run his house, which is huge because Stephen basically has a mansion with rooms for all of the different aspects. And Wilson is just the most beautiful, like, support person ever, and I'll talk more about him in my mental health video, which is coming next. But Wilson is a very kindly old man, and he's constantly kind of being a steadying force to Stephen in the outside world, outside of all of the internal chaos that's going on. And Wilson is almost like a father figure to Stephen, and I absolutely loved him. He was so sweet and kind and caring and just ready to jump into the adventure with Stephen, even though he has serious reservations a lot of time. I'm gonna read a really quick section of Wilson from page 21 of this book. Where Stephen has asked him to go and get drinks for himself and a couple of the aspects, because in order to keep up this hallucination as strongly as he does, everything needs to be as if they were real people. I knew somewhere deep within that he had not really brought cups for Ivy and Tobias, though he made an act of handing something to the empty chairs. My mind filled in the rest, imagining drinks, imagining Ivy strolling over to pluck hers from Wilson's hand as he tried to give it to where he thought she was sitting. She smiled at him fondly. The whole cast was so distinct, and those were kind of the characters that I really wanted to point out as the main cast, but there were so many fantastic characters both in the external and the internal world that Stephen is dealing with, and it's just the way that he designed the entire cast I thought was absolutely brilliant. So if you've read this book and you have any comments on the characters, I would absolutely love to discuss them with you, so please go ahead and drop non-spoiler comments down in the comments below. And I hope that you enjoyed this deep dive into the characters. If you like this format where I go deeper into a couple of the different plot elements or characters, let me know, because I would like to do more of these. If you haven't already subscribed, I would love to have you join my channel, and I hope you all have a fabulous day, and I will see you in the next video.